Hi class, I wanted to give you some feedback on exercise 1, the libel exercise that you did, safe or dangerous. I'm pretty much in agreement with the authors on their answers. Before we get into this, one of the things I asked you was when you were considering whether this was safe or dangerous, consider the 4 elements of libel and the 3 defenses. So you had publication, identification, defamation, and level of fault, negligence or reckless disregard. And then also the 3 defenses, truth, fair comment, and qualified privilege. For the 4 elements of a libel case, again, all 4 of them have to be there. If any one of them is missing, then the case falls apart. I also wanted to just very briefly give you an example using a exercise you did previously on the Jiffy Foods robbery, where I mentioned that you don't want to say that a person did a crime. If you're mentioning that long after the fact of the person's trial where they were convicted, then you've got truth as defense. But of course, you're going to be reporting this long before this person goes to trial. So you don't want to directly associate any individual with a crime unless they've already been convicted of that crime. So you're just going to say a suspect came in, pulled a gun, pulled a knife, pulled a shotgun, whatever, and robbed the place. Well, of course, that's a criminal action, and that would be defamatory. That certainly would hold up a person to hatred, contempt, ridicule, or scorn in their community if believed. So, but on the other hand, you can report that a person, and you can report that person by name, you can fully identify the person when they have been arrested and charged with a crime, because that's part of a public document, and it's true, they've been arrested and charged with a crime, and here's the public document to prove it. So that would be qualified privilege. So that's a little different than actually saying the person did the crime, as opposed to saying they were arrested and charged with a crime. So let's go through these. The first one is dangerous. The sentences imply that Andrews is guilty of assault on the police officers, which would be a crime, even though he has not been convicted and his version of the incident has not been heard. Because it appears to be based on unofficial statements by the officers, it is not protected by qualified privilege. So you're not taking it off of a public document like a police report, or you're not getting it from a public proceeding like a court case or a press conference. Just 2 officers just telling you something unofficially does not give you qualified privilege. The second one is safe. So long as their accounts are fair and accurate, news writers are immune from libel suits while reporting official government proceedings such as trials. So again, that would come under, even if all 4 things there are there for libel, you have a defense, which is qualified privilege. It's an open public meeting. The entire public can come to this if they wanted to. Third one is safe. Note the story's careful wording. It never says that Cassandra is guilty, only that she has been charged with the crime. So it's the same thing like with the guy who robbed the Jiffy Food store. You don't say that he did that. You just say that somebody did that, a suspect did that. But you can report that somebody has been charged with the crime, because that will generate a public document. Number 4 is safe. The story cannot libel anyone because it never identifies a specific individual. And if there's no identification, then one of those 4 elements, those 4 legs of the libel table is there, and the table collapses or the case collapses. Number 5 is safe. Americans are free to criticize government agencies and officials. A large city may employ thousands of people who have a dozen or more elected officials, and this story does not identify any of them by name. I can't give you an exact number, but the larger the group that you're referring to, the more protected you are from defamation, because the larger it gets, the more difficult it is to identify everybody in that group. as opposed to a small group where everybody might know the people's names. And again, the larger the group, the more you apply something to a larger and larger group, the more it's just considered hyperbole, exaggeration, and not necessarily taken seriously as defamation. And it has to be taken seriously for a community to hold somebody up to hatred, contempt, ridicule, or scorn. Number 6 is very similar. Presidents are public officials, and Americans are free to express their opinions of them, even opinions harshly critical of them. Number 7 is dangerous. The story is clearly libelous. Before any determination by a court, it convicts Guiterman, calling him the biggest drug dealer in the city. Well, that's obviously a defamatory comment. The story is also unfair to Guiterman. If months later a jury finds him innocent, his reputation will have been ruined. Let me bring this last 2 up here. Number 8 is also dangerous. The story reports a lawsuit's claim that Tifton struck a police officer. That's a criminal action, which would be defamatory. Then going beyond the lawsuit, the story seems to call Tifton a criminal. Now we got double defamation here. Note, Tifton is a captain in your city's fire department, a detail that normally would be included in the story. And finally, number 9, dangerous. Accusing a person of being a communist or an anarchist could injure the person's reputation, and the bearing on that person's fitness to serve as president of a group of coin collectors is slight. Not quite sure what the authors mean by that, but in general, this to me is a little bit of a gray area. How defamatory is it to call a person a communist or an anarchist? In that one instance where the guy that had come from South Vietnam was called a communist in his community, that clearly has a physical damage to him and his reputation. But just referring to somebody as a communist or an anarchist, I don't know. It would depend on whether the person suing for defamation could prove damages. Could they prove that their reputation is damaged by your comment? Could they prove that they lost business or that they lost the position of president of the coin collectors because of your comment? So they would have to prove it. But there's not much any kind of a defense in this case. So those are 9 examples. So you can go ahead and do exercise 2 now. And if you want, you can go ahead and do exercise 3 on privacy based on the readings in the chapter. I'm also going to send you some additional information on privacy, and I will put the due dates of exercise 2 and exercise 3 in announcements.